Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have this amazing guest. I say that all the time, but she's really, really next level amazing. Jenn Baljko, who's joining me, and I absolutely can't wait to share her story. I'm going to explain what she does now, and then we'll go get to her journey that we're going to talk about. But she guides people through joy journeys, through personal pivots, professional reinvention, helps them navigate through breakthroughs, breakdowns, fierce awakenings, and they are fierce, aren't they? So they can live with more joy, wonder, and creative expression. She is or has launched in 2020, Always on My Way, which is like a creative, collaborative creativity hub and a place to move, meditate, make, and muse, which I love. And apologetically without shame, which I think is such a huge piece of it, right? To be just fully present in yourself, in your life. She's a mindful writing mentor, developmental book editor. You can find her on jenniferbalko.com. It's B-A-L-I.
J. B-A-L-J.
B-A-L-J-K-O.
K-O. Thank
Jennifer,
you.
BALJKO.com. I'm going to put that in the comments. You can find her. With a 30-year journalism career and writing career, she's the perfect person to help you bring your memoir to life or your story to life. So welcome, Jenn. That was a long intro, but thank you for being here.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for having that. And it's always so interesting to have those words reflecting back to
Yeah,
you,
isn't it?
right? Like, wow, did I really do that? Yeah,
But I
I
feel
did
like
do that.
we're so much more than the bio.
Right.
That's why I don't really like the bio or like putting a label on myself, if I'm on a show or something, because I feel like we're just so much more than that.
I totally agree.
And
Yeah,
and what I wanted
still
to
discovering it, still
exactly,
discovering
and
who
we're
we are.
constantly shifting and changing and moving in new directions. But you embarked on this incredible journey, and I heard your story on another friend's podcast. So we have a mutual friend named Wendy also.
Wendy, yeah. I've had a few Wendy's coming in
So
recently who are working a
interesting.
lot of magic for
So
me.
interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was Revolution Rebels, and you were on her show. And then she was a guest on my show. And we started talking after and got on the topic of you for some reason. I'm like, I have to meet this woman. I have to share her story. So thank you for being here. And tell me where you were at when you kind of sparked this idea, or it just got kind of dropped into your awareness like a download
The idea of which one? The big
of the
long walk
of
or
the
always on my
journey,
way?
just the
Yeah.
journey itself.
My there's so many pieces of the journey. Like it just always feels like it just kind of just comes, Like I can't ever have planned that I would have gotten up and left New Jersey to move to San Francisco, to then move to Barcelona. I met a guy in the middle of a square in Barcelona during a festival, right? Like then we
You met the
walked.
guy, not just a guy,
No,
the
no, no, just a guy, like the guy, like a guy that I'm with now for, I don't
Mhm.
know, is it like 16 years already? Like
Wow.
just a chance meeting in the middle of the square and during,
But is it?
there were thousands of people
But
at
is
this
it a chance
festival.
meeting? I don't think so.
No, it's not. It was the moment because he had been in San Francisco before and we didn't meet when I was living there, right? Like so it happened in the middle of
It was
Barcelona.
like these near misses, like, you know,
I,
maybe, I don't know.
I don't know, but we ended up walking across two continents together,
Right.
three
So
and a half years.
oh my gosh, 3.5 years, and you walked from Bangkok to Barcelona.
Barcelona. Yeah. So like that, it was, magic that fell out of the sky. It was a wind that whispered to me and I heard it and I invited myself to go do it. And I had
Love that you
asked
said yes.
Luis if he wanted to come along with us, with me, and he said yes.
What's so incredible to me is that you kind of had this downloader idea come in, and then I think you sent an email to him at work or something.
I did. I did. I was just bouncing around Instagram like we do. And I ended up on a guy who was cycling from Oregon to Patagonia. And I had gone into his website and I saw that his parents had walked across the United States in the 70s and were on the cover of the National Geographic. So right before lunch, before Lluis went for lunch, I shot him an email and I said, "Before we're old and broken, do you want to go for like a long walk like these people did? Like,
Like
I
a
don't know,
long walk.
like Barcelona to Bangkok." We had initially started it that way, and then we decided to walk home when it was a
I
yes.
love that.
And his email response was, "Well, that's a long way." I'm like, what kind of person says that?
Oh my gosh. But what's so incredible about him is he actually was super open to the idea. Like he was like, well, maybe we could do this, you know?
And not just open to it. Like he came back and we looked at the big map that was hanging in the office, the world map we had, and we're like, oh, that's a really interesting. We've never really been through Central Asia and all the Silk Road, old Silk Road stuff.
Yeah.
His response the next morning, he'd been thinking about it all night. The next morning at work, he shoots me an email and says, "Before we're old and broken, why don't we do a really long walk, like from Buenos Aires to San Francisco?"
Oh my gosh.
So he came back that night and we looked at the map again, like, oh wow, like we would be retracing a lot of steps through South America. We have the advantage of knowing Spanish. That would be really culturally enriching. Like,
Yeah.
so we sat with both, like they were, yes, like we were going to do a long walk. It
Wow.
was just choosing which one was actually going to
So how
happen.
did you land on the Bangkok to Barcelona route?
We
Ultimately.
had decided ultimately, like the start point for Bangkok was just sort of, we had to start somewhere. So we
Good
both
point.
like we both like Thailand a lot. Bangkok was an accessible city in that it was easy to reach from Barcelona. And we knew Bangkok and we had already visited Thailand. So we thought Thailand would be a great place to start. We didn't start in China because of all the visa issues, all the other stuff. So Thailand was like an easy place to start.
Right.
And how we ended up deciding that route was we had never really been in the middle parts. We had been to India and other parts of Asia. We had been to other parts of Italy. But all of these, like the Pamir Mountains, like other parts of India, we had dreamed about going to Pakistan. We had dreamed about going to Iran. Like, we didn't get to Pakistan because of all the visa issues, but we were lucky enough to cross like Georgia and Azerbaijan and
Um,
Uzbekistan and like take time on these old Silk Road trails that
Wasn't it incredible
it's
to
incredible to do
trace
it.
like this history and walk the path that so many walked before you? Like there's
Yeah,
something about that. Like I feel like with every step, you're taking in the energies of those that came before you and feeling so much of that part of history, you know, like the trade and the sorrow and the joy and the journey and just all the energies of it. Like you're on the road, stepping through
literally.
steps that they were stepping. I mean, it's got to be really impactful in some energetic way.
It's super impactful energetically. It's super difficult physically, right? Like physically,
Yeah.
there were a lot of challenges, and you really get to know somebody when you are on a foot journey across
I
two
mean, the good,
continents.
the bad, and the ugly, I would think, you know,
Ah, good, bad, and
3 years is a
ugly.
long time. Not
And we
every,
had breaks, you know, like it wasn't,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
was so intense because you're every moment outside of your comfort zone. And even though you know you're heading towards this village or this town on the map, you have no idea what's coming any moment in
And
time.
also you're dealing with weather,
Or weather,
dealing with
oh,
the elements, you're
extremes,
dealing with traffic or no
traffic.
traffic. Like what
Yeah,
happens if I get hurt and there's no 911 out here? You
that's
know, a
right.
lot of unknowns.
All of this, like the food, the water, where you're going to sleep every night.
All of it.
How do you trust people? And we started very, very deliberately with this idea that we knew we were walking because we knew that we knew there was kindness in the world. So we were messengers of kindness, and I felt very, very strongly that we were laying out like the energy cables. You know, we were like the electricity
Yeah.
guys that do the last mile.
Almost like anchoring these grid points of energy, connecting these these points energetically and almost laying the groundwork for the frequencies of kindness and love and openness as you went forward, I would think.
It was, and it took strength, to do this every day, or courage, courage to do this, and but we just began to say very early on that we are open for invitation. Like we did this little symbol, like the little taxi cab,
I love
like
it.
our little flag that goes up and says,
Yeah.
"We are open to invitation. Life, what do you got?"
I
For us
love that
today.
you had that because I think what we put out, we receive, right? Wherever we are vibrationally, we're attracting that in resonance. So if that's the frequency you're holding of potential, right?
And then
And
it comes.
opportunity, it comes because you're calling it in, basically.
And yeah, somebody will see you walking down the side of the road. They'll go get you a water, come back, say, "I just saw you walking. Here's here's a
Oh
water.
my
Here's
gosh,
like
how
an
beautiful.
invitation, like for staying over. Come over and like we'll do your laundry and you can take a shower." You
Oh
know,
my gosh, like
these things are so important and
when you're a
special. Like
stranger on the road and the kindness of strangers, like you're saying, was remarkable that it really was true. And it gives you almost a renewed faith in humanity, doesn't it?
it does. And there are, there were trials. Like there wasn't the easy, everything kind of parted for us. It did feel that way in some moments. And we arrived just before the pandemic broke out. We finished, which
Mhm.
was really, we do know other long distance walkers who were out during the pandemic. And it
That's
was
tough.
super challenging,
Tough.
super challenging. So, but we had moments of people like not being in the vibration of kindness for sure.
Sure. Sure.
But we could count on one hand the most serious incidences, and they weren't so serious
Yeah.
in,
In the
in, the,
bigger
in the
scheme of
scope of possibility, right? Of what could have gone
So, did you
wrong.
find that your mapping was pretty accurate? Because you have to kind of gauge how far you can go in a day, miles wise, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how accurate some of the mapping would be on these in these back countries on these
Yeah.
roads, like
You,
that would
you
be challenging, right?
Yeah, there were parts where it was not always accurate and where we found some shortcuts that we had to decide whether or not we would go for a shortcut or not. I've
Mhm.
got to say, Luis did an amazing job of sort of really digging into the maps. And when we knew for sure it was a go, and we knew we were leaving within 6 months of the start date, he sat down almost every day, like was looking at paper atlases, looking at
Mm,
Google Maps. And we had always kind of figured out, like, if we can follow a river, rivers are always like global transportation
yes,
networks. So if we could find the river, then we can find the road next to it.
right.
If there's a road next to that, there might be a train line and then a
Mhm,
bigger highway.
mhm.
But we were looking for ways that towns were connected, like old ways of kind of walking.
Almost like a puzzle piece, right? You're trying to put
It
these
is.
puzzle pieces together because it's so different when you're traveling by train or plane or car. You don't have the logistical things to think about, like, oh, we can't just stop in and get a bite to eat, right? So, how did
Oh,
you prepare? Like, I'm just so curious. How do you even know where to start? Because you've never done it before. And how do you prepare? Are you like looking at a lot of backpacking, backpacker
oh,
sites
sure.
or something, or trying to figure out like what kind of sustenance to throw in the backpack? I mean, you're not going to find trail
Yeah.
mix in Azerbaijan necessarily, right?
Well, you find their version of it, which is curious because then
Yeah.
you have to like kind of know what you're looking for at some point.
Right.
But we did do a trial run. We walked 600 kilometers in 2000 and when did we do that? 2004? I don't know, about a year before we got started. So we walked 300 kilometers, 600 kilometers in 3 weeks. And that was our test. We walked from the border of France in Catalonia down to the end of Catalonia, past the Ebro River. Like we had a trial run. So that was our like, what could we possibly do each day? Right? That was sort of our trial run. It changed in real life on the real adventure pretty often
I
because
think you have to be open to change in some way, and you can't be
yeah,
really rigid because everything's in flux, right? Everything is, your energy is up and down, and your
You're not
body is,
feeling well
I
and your
was gonna
stomach
say,
isn't, yeah.
your body's telling you something, so you can't just say, I'm gonna muscle through this for 3 years.
No.
You know?
Well, in the end,
Right.
you do. You kind of muscle through it at some point because it's like at some point you do want to just get done with it.
Yeah.
Even with the breaks and the extended breaks, there is a point where you are like, well, how much more nomadic do you really want to be? But it's you learn really quickly, like you never throw away your water until you actually open the fountain with water coming out of it. Because we did that
And
one
then
day
it
wrong
was dry.
and there was no water and then there
Gosh.
was no way of knowing where the next shop is. And we didn't have Google at the time and we used paper maps initially. And then we learned about Maps.me and download Maps.me, but and we didn't always have GPS, right? Like we
Right.
just were in places that didn't have connection sometimes. So you would look at a map and like, oh, there's a grocery store in the next town. And you start fantasizing about all the things you're going to buy at the grocery store when you get to the grocery store. And then you get to the grocery store and it's been locked up for years. Like
Oh
Google
my,
Earth doesn't go by that little
that is
town.
crushing. That must be crushing. It's like this
It's
rise and fall of expectation, right? It's almost
right.
forcing
And
us to,
you're fantasizing for like an hour,
oh, oh,
2, 3 hours, like, oh my God, I don't know what they're gonna have in the refrigerator, but I'm gonna open it up and it's gonna be delicious and it's gonna be, and then you get there and there's like garbage all in the front of the
oh my
grocery, it's
God.
all chained up, all locked up, and you're
Oh
like,
my gosh.
oh, don't even. So you learn very quickly that there's this to manage your expectations. Like you
I was
learn very
gonna
quickly,
ask,
like it's not
yeah.
gonna happen all the
What was
time.
the thing that you found coming up for you emotionally, being in that space of silence and walking? Because you're very
Yeah.
present, um, in
Yeah, very.
in that experience. And when you're present and silent, so much comes up about ourselves and our lives. So what was that like for you?
It is it is everything you think it's going to be, right? When you say those words like that, like you're walking in the noisy world in your own little turtle shell with
Mhm.
a person you love, right? Like,
Right,
so
right.
1 minute I'm looking down the road and I'm like, oh my God, who's this guy up there walking like this? Like he's got all this energy in the world and I can't even keep up with him. And then there's like the next moment I'm like, wow, that's amazing that he has so much energy, Why don't like I should let his energy fall back into me, or other days that he's looking back and thinking, wow, she's really strong today. Like her energy's carrying me
Oh
forward.
my gosh.
And then you get caught, like you're like, wow, listen to that bird. And then you get caught in like a bird song. And then you're like, oh my God, there's a car racing 100 miles an hour down the road. And like, I got to jump off the road. It is
Oh my God.
hyper sensitivity, right? So when you do get these really quiet moments, the loop comes in, right? Like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through so much suffering? Why did I agree to this? What kind of stupid idea was this? Like, what are you doing, Jen? What are you doing out here in this world like this? Like, this is insanity that you're
Sounds
doing.
like the ego, right? Coming
It
up to
is.
shake you to your core and almost forcing you to release the ego, because you can't endure with those kinds of thoughts. You have to
No.
kind of face it, right? And be like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go there because I'm committed to this.
I'm committed to it. And at some point you're just like, all right, well, we'll get there eventually. Like you the moment that you wake up in the morning and it's like there's this stillness in the world in the early morning hours, you're just like, wow, this is amazing to be on this planet. Like it's so amazing to be a human being on this planet in this moment right now in the stillness of the world, right? Like there's that moment when you're like super magnetized by yourself, like in the world, like filled with wonder.
I get it.
And then you're like, yeah, but I am just this big. I am just this tiny, right? Like you're kind of like, wow, this is that constant question of who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I now? Who am I now? Who am I now? And then when the chatter really gets into the, like, when it gets down into the bunny holes that you don't really want to go down sometimes, I did carry headphones. And I would put one in and I would just put music on and I would sing out loud in the middle of somewhere.
I love it. I love
And I would start dancing in the middle of the street. And the things that I started to really feel, like I started to feel really connected to everything. Like I have never appreciated ants more than I did during this walk and watching them carry, like walk in a line and carry all their weight. Because I was one of them. Like
it.
I was one of
There
them.
was a metaphor there for you, right?
I'm like, wow, look at these little tiny ants doing their thing. They're not like having a debate with themselves about why they're doing all this. They're just doing it.
They're actually just in it, right? They're just in
Doing
it.
it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. And then the same, like I would see butterflies on the side of the road, and here I am with like 40 pounds on my back.
Oh,
It's
wow.
hot and gross and heavy, and I'd see this butterfly on the side of the road, and I pick it up, like I bend all the way down and pick up this beautiful little butterfly, and I'd be like, I acknowledge you, like I see you're beautiful. I see you beautiful and brilliant in however you showed up here. Thank you for being here. And then I would carry this like dead butterfly to a place that I felt like it deserved to be, like a tree or a flower or I don't know, like whatever nice little,
There's so much soul and heart in your journey.
yeah,
There's so much
there has to
more
be.
to it than the actual physical accomplishment. It's like, speaking of that butterfly, it's like this metamorphosis that's happening daily on the inside, and it's changing everything about you. But to the person driving by, you're just a person walking on the street, but you're going through this insane rediscovery of who you truly are and
Well,
peeling,
I agree. If you
right?
ask Luis the same question, he'd be like, well, I was already that person. Like, he has already felt like he had arrived to the point that he could do that, right? Like,
Wow,
so
that's
when you ask him,
impressive.
like, was there a big change? And he's like, no, my big change already happened like 10 or 20 years before when he first traveled by
That's
himself,
really
right?
something. That's
So
really something.
he felt like he was bringing all this wisdom already
Mm.
there. And I felt like I was just showing up at life like, okay, now I got to do that. Like, I got to do this now. Okay. I don't know how to do that.
It's incredible that he was so aligned with his being before you stepped out, and then that you were able to transform throughout the journey, pace somebody who's so aligned and confident in their being, and then also meet him as a partner and equal.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. Mm.
And we will say like when you actually ask like what is the hardest part of the journey, he will point to me and I will point to him because that was it was very hard, right? Because
Just
he never doubted for one moment that we would finish this, and I quit 100 times a day. You know,
oh my
like this is
God.
too hard, this is too hard, and he's very masculine, directed
I
energy.
almost feel like he's kind of like the guide, and you just keep facing the guide, you know?
Well, there was a point where I was, and on that, like if this guy could do it, I'm gonna do it too. This is my idea. But no matter how much you talked about it, like we talked about the vision of this walk before we took it, and I thought we were gonna pause longer. I thought we were gonna go slower. I didn't think we were gonna have mileage, everyday mileage minimums to meet. But he was very practical. He's like, we have a visa, we have this many miles, we have this many days with a visa. Like, he was very practical on this.
I think you need that too, because you can't get stuck if your
That's
visa
right.
runs out and that interrupts the whole thing. Like, you have to be mindful of those things, right?
And then complimentary was he doesn't always know when to stop.
Mm.
So I was that also like, we gotta slow down. Like, my God, we're in Iran. Like, we're being invited to these people's homes. Like, we why are we doing this walk if not to enjoy this?
And experience that
Or volunteer
hospitality.
here, or spend a few extra days
What was
here.
it like to have someone just invite you into their home? Like, did they just see you on the
It's,
side of the road and say,
yeah,
come eat, come eat, come join us?
yeah. Like Luis was, he's so meticulous. He was logging every single act of kindness.
That's a book right there. That's
Which
a
is
book.
like,
Wow.
these people gave us soy milk. These people gave us, roasted meat steaks. These people invited us in. And for a long time, I was mapping that too. I had different colors on my map. I have lost, that phone broke and I lost some of those map pins.
Oh,
But we had, like, how was it? Like, the first few times you're kind of like, oh, it's okay, thank you. Like, you're kind of not really sure. And then by the end, you're kind of like, by the end, within a few months, you're like a few weeks, you're kind of like, we are not going to get through all of this unless we accept
alone.
people's help. And if the way they help is to bring us a bottle of water or to let us sit in the shade of their yard or
Gosh.
to just offer us tea, like, this is so nourishing for us and we need to appreciate that. So we and each culture has a different way of expressing this, right? So we walked through Myanmar, which had just begun to really open up, and that we were allowed to walk through the places that we walked through while there weren't always truces between ethnic tribes. There was still fighting going on. And well, now we've seen it, like we've seen what's happened in the last few months with this. When we were there, you could still feel that tension, and this was in 2016. So you could still feel that tension. And they were not allowed to invite you in for overnight stays. They weren't
Right. It
allowed
was
to,
too much of a risk. They had to be so careful, right?
because of their police military rule that they lived through for so long.
So would you
So
camp or something? Like, what would you
well,
do in those
yeah,
situations?
we camped, but that was illegal. Like, we would just find a place to camp, and if we got caught, we would, and we had situations like that. Like, the police were called, and we were escorted to a hotel, a tourist hotel that was very expensive, and then we hitchhiked back to the place that we were picked up because we had to walk that
Right.
part.
Oh
So we
gosh.
had to always be like aware of what was kind of happening in each country, and very quickly, without language, like, we don't speak Burmese, we don't speak Uzbek, we don't speak Pamiri, like, we had to learn symbols, and
Communicate.
we carried laminated things that just had like water and food and like universal pictures. But we learned, like, in Uzbekistan, this is the sign for a married woman, and this is the sign in India for a married woman. So and then we were asked, like, are we a couple? Right? Like,
Right.
suddenly you're being, like, you're thrown into these cultural expressions that you don't know, and you have to kind of tiptoe lightly. And then when you're invited into people's homes, it just opens up. You become the observer very quickly. Like, okay, how do you do things here? How do you do
Right. You
things?
don't want to offend anybody.
I
You
don't want
want
to
to be
offend
so
anybody.
mindful, yeah, of the culture.
I want to be curious. I also know that I'm a Western woman. I also know that I come with my own value system and ideals. How do I engage in conversations? Like, because they most certainly have never seen a woman walking like this through the
Right.
world in
Right.
many of the towns we walk through. And there were certain moments where I did feel like, let me roll my shoulders back. No matter how tired I am, let me roll my shoulders a little bit back. Let me stand a little taller because some young girl is going to see me.
Yes.
And I don't know what kind of influence that will be. Like, we will never know if some 10-year-old girl somewhere saw us walking by and said, wow, is that possible for me? Like, could that be something I do in some other way in the world
Yeah.
later on in life? Like, I was very conscious of that most of the way, and Luis too, like, because men also have different roles in these cultures too, right? So
Right.
when he would get up and take his plate to the sink, like, the men at the table were like, men don't do that here. And he's like, I do that here. And then he would look at the wife and say, thank you so much for cooking a beautiful meal for us.
Wow.
And they were like, oh my God, a man, like,
like a man is
appreciating
honoring
me.
me and in that
Yeah,
way,
and I said you have to also be careful with this. Like, and he was always very like never
respectful.
like it never like touched or like never unless that was an invitation, to just give a hug. In some places that was okay,
Mhm.
but and I also had to do that too. Like, oh no no no, like no no, we don't hug, right? Like you don't do this with other women there. Like you don't do that with me here. So it
Mm.
was very like, how could we be fully us while also being in this space where they were watching us and we were watching them, right? Like,
You know that change happened with every encounter
yeah, there's
on both
something that
sides. There's
happens.
something that's exchanged there
Right.
energetically, culturally. It's like an opening.
It's
It's
an
like an
opening.
invitation, I think, to maybe think a little bit different for a
Yeah.
moment, maybe. Even just
Yeah.
planting a seed of possibility is,
And you want to be careful, what seeds you plant
yeah.
too, right? Like, but I think we're just all naturally and organically filled with curiosity for each other. So if, and Luis always says, the shortest distance between two lines is a smile, or 2 points is a smile. So we
Aw,
really did like adapt that. Like, we didn't walk through the world with our claws out,
yeah.
thinking that we were going to be attacked.
How did it impact you as a couple to do something
Yeah,
so challenging physically? Um, just being in so many different unpredictable scenarios with your partner. How did your relationship change as a result of this journey?
it it made us stronger and it broke us. Like, and then it made it strong again. Like, we we knew we could depend on each other, right? Like we went knowing we could depend on each other and that we would take care of each other as best we could. But there was a moment, and there was a moment like multiple times, where I was like, we are pushing too hard. We are pushing too hard. And he's like, we're not pushing enough. We're pushing too hard. We're not pushing enough.
How do you
And
come to
there,
common ground with that? Because you have so many
yeah,
variables. Like he's really mindful of the timing, the visa, the mileage, the this, and you're like, but I want to actually experience,
enjoy.
this shouldn't just be like a forced march, right? Like we should
and
actually.
and at that and that was the words. I'm like, this feels like a forced march. Like, what am I freaking doing here? And like,
How do you come to
so we broke up at one point. We
oh my
split.
gosh, on the walk
Yes,
you up.
we
Oh my gosh.
we were on a break, and we had finished one point of Turkey um, in the north on the Black Sea, and we took a break for winter. And over winter break, I was like, I found all these trails in the south, all these like the Lycian Way, and there were people who used to walk. And I said, look, we finished up here in the north of Turkey. Like, we could just fly back down to the south of Turkey and pick up the trail and do a new trail towards like Istanbul and towards Greece and all this other stuff. And he's like, this is the path. And I'm like, no, this is your invented path. This is not the path. This is what you say the path. So we had this whole breakup moment, like screaming and yelling. And I said, fine, you go to the north. I'm going to the south. And that's what happened. We flew from Barcelona. We were on break in winter. We did come back to Barcelona that part of the year to see mostly his family. And I didn't see my family that year, but we took a couple months break. So we flew back into Istanbul, spent a couple days together in Istanbul. I flew to the south. He flew to the north.
What? Are
And for
you
like
serious?
6 weeks we weren't together. And
Wow.
during that time,
Oh my
he
God.
was like, yeah, I get to do like 35 kilometers, 40 kilometers an hour. He hurt himself. Like, he had a very bad blister that turned into an infection. And he almost wouldn't stop until somebody like helped him and said, no, you really got to take a few days off. But he was like, I'm just doing my own thing. I'm so good. I'm walking by myself. And me, I started walking. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't walk these trails up and down with all this weight and like going high and big elevation drops.
Oh my
I
gosh.
found myself on a beachside, like little resort town, and I volunteered at an orange grove picking oranges. for a week.
What?
And then I walked a little further and I was having breakfast somewhere and this woman in a bicycle, she came and had breakfast and she was starting to ask me questions and she's like, I really like you. Do you want to hang out with me in my town? Like walk to my town, which is like a
Oh
couple
my God, I love this.
and she's like, oh my God, and you do yoga? Like there's gonna be a yoga festival next week.
What? I would
A
have
yoga
known about
retreat.
that.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'll come to the yoga retreat.
Oh
So
my
I ended
God.
up doing hiking with her and she lent me her bike and like I was just kind of in this town for a week or two and then did the yoga retreat in Turkish, which I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Downward dog is the same everywhere, right?
Right.
So I got to meet these really wonderful people and I'm sending Louis messages like, how's your walk going? Yeah, it's good. I walked 40 kilometers today. And I'm like, I did yoga by the beach.
Oh my
and,
God.
and it was, we both really, really needed that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
We both so needed that space. And it had a lasting effect. Like when we did meet up at the end of Turkey, we met up in Çanakkale. And I was ready. Like then we kind of, like, you know what? I'm going to stay a little longer. I'm going to meet you right at the border. So I met him right at the border. And then we walked into Greece and I was like coming off this like, oh my God, life can be so slow. And he
Yeah.
was coming off this, oh my God, I went so fast.
Oh my gosh.
So like through Greece and through Albania, like we had a lot of kind of punch down moments a little bit like, oh come on, like we're in Europe now, we don't have to rush, we don't have visas anymore, like we can slow
Yeah.
down. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was this very and I did. I walked away again at one moment. I said, "This is like it's 40 degrees Celsius here, and it's hot. Like, can't we go to the beach for a few days? Like, why are we picking the hottest trails and the most
Right.
uncomfortable trails?"
Right.
So I said, "You know what? I'm going to go to the beach. I'll see you in a few weeks." And then I
You
got
did
down
it
to
again.
I got down to a deli and I bought a soda because I needed the sugar. And I sat there for a few minutes and I said, this is ridiculous, Jen. Like, you need to walk. Like, this is ridiculous. So I hitchhiked back up. A German couple picked me up. And I said, yeah, don't worry. I'll let you know when we stop. Like, there'll be this guy walking. I know which way he's going. And as soon as we see him, we'll just stop
Oh,
the
what
car and I'll
road he's
pop out.
on.
I bought him a soda, really cold, ice cold, like, drink.
Oh my God.
And they took me up and I popped out. And Luis is like, I, jumped out of the car, this tiny car. And he's like, you're here? And I said, yeah, I'm here. And he's like, I thought you were going to the beach. I said, no, I want to be with you. Like, I want to walk. I took my time off. You had your time off. We have to find a way to get back together. And he's like,
Yeah.
are you sure? And I said, yeah, here's a Coke.
Here's a peace offering, an ice cold Coke.
Like ice cold, soda for you. Like we're not big soda drinkers, but that like moment when you open it and it's
Yeah.
like hot and
Cold.
sugary, and you're like, oh, it's so cold. And he's like, wow, okay, thanks. And that night we slept under. That was like right at the edge of Albania, right at the beginning of. Was at the end of. Yeah, it was right at the end of Albania. We like slept under really beautiful chestnut trees, like ancient wisdom chestnut trees.
Wow.
And there was just like a peace there, like there was a
I really
really,
feel like nature speaks to us, like I'm really
yeah,
connected when I'm out in nature, and I just really feel the trees speak to me, like I can
yeah,
feel them
yeah,
and
me
hear
too.
them, so that must have been magical to have that reconnection in such a beautiful space under these
Yeah,
ancient trees. That must have been really special.
it was. And I had been a tree hugger secretly before this walk, but I
Mhm.
became a very like expressive tree hugger on this walk.
Well, I remember when I first emailed you, you said, I'm going to be forest bathing and I'll get
That's
back
right.
to you later. I'm like, I like her already. Anybody who's forest bathing, I'm like, you're going to be a friend, whether you know it or not. You're now my
Yeah.
friend.
And when you said you replied back like that's awesome, like I knew like right away that this was gonna, well, but then that's the path of me, isn't it? Like that, like yeah, I need my time to be in nature. I need my time
Yeah,
to just go hug a tree and to go find a
yeah.
tree
It's
that
funny
wants to
that you
be
said
hugged.
that because I wrote that book.
Yeah, I know. Find
The
the
path
path
of
of
me.
me. I
Yeah,
know.
but I can't
I
wait
know.
to get a little bit deeper as you went further through
Yeah.
Europe. You did mention to me in our preliminary conversation that you were noticing that these cultures had different landscapes. And
Yeah.
you were telling me
Yeah.
how, in certain areas like Western Europe, there were like no fences, just like open fields, and everyone's properties kind of blended. And then you went further. So I was wondering if you could speak to me about that, because that's really kind of reflective of the cultures, right? And the people.
It was so telling to start noticing that, right? And we didn't notice it until later on. But yeah, so you walk through sort of Turkey and Greece, and well, Turkey's quite developed. So there's like apartment buildings in the towns that we walk through and stuff. And like before Turkey, like into Georgia, you kind of walk through and it's just kind of open space, right? And then you just walk up a little path or the driveway up to their front house, their front door, or you don't really know where the property starts and finishes. You
Mhm.
kind of just there. It's a big open spaces. The part of Georgia that we walk through, in the middle sections, it's just like, land, and you're just kind of walking, and there's a house over there somewhere. And then you kind of get into Turkey, and in parts of Turkey, it becomes a little bit more, but it's a little bit more sectioned off. Greece too, Croatia also, like through like the Baltics, you're kind of the Balkans. They're kind of like fences, but they have rose bushes and they have a nice porch. So people are sitting on their porch and like looking out over their garden. They take a lot of pride in the way their garden looks and the entry into their house. And then they invite you to sit on the porch with them, right?
Oh,
Like it's
I love it.
and then you see the love and care that they put into their gardens.
Mhm.
And it is a little bit about there is a little bit, and I'm half Croatian, so I know a little bit that some of it is a little bit showy. Like, oh, look at how well I'm doing. I
Mhm.
got this beautiful
Mhm.
garden.
Right.
But it's also how they watch life go by, right? They tend to have hotter summers, they're outside more, they enjoy their outdoor space while also kind of putting a little partition around it. Then you get through like Italy, and Italy starts having the high fences. You might be able to see the houses inside. There's usually a dog or two or three that will bark at you every single time you go by. They have big signs on their thing saying that the dog is here to protect them. They have big high fence, chain link fence, sometimes wooden fences, but they're about as high as you are. Like they're not super high.
But kind
But
of
then you
walled
walk,
off. It's
they're
more
kind
walled
of
off.
walled off. Like there's a clear, like, this is my property. I have some
Right.
animal protecting it. I have an alarm system
Right.
protecting it.
Hmm.
We don't really want you to come in,
There's a
but we don't want to
barrier.
completely
What's
shut
a
you out.
barrier?
Right. It's like this is the line that you can
Hmm.
cross. And then
Hmm.
by the time you get to like France and Catalonia, like it's not just the walls and fences up to here or here, like just a little bit above you. They're tall walls with tall trees. You do not see past the wall at all. This is
Interesting.
their private spot. You are outside. We don't want anything to do with you. Like it's a clear barrier.
Listen. Yeah. Yeah.
And as we got closer and closer to home, like coming through France and coming through Catalonia, like people are more you're just like these European people walking. You're nobody special. And
Right.
the invitations were very few. Like
Interesting. That's so
like we got
interesting.
a lot of invitations, and just like come sit down with us, have a coffee. Like constant, like for most of Central Asia up until up until the middle of Italy, right? Like the middle of Italy. But then these last like once in a while we had a coffee, and once in a while we had somebody say hi to us.
Oh, wow.
Like and we tested this like in Catalonia on the way back. These are his people. We speak his language, right?
Mm.
Like we are speaking Catalan language. And we were in this small little town, and Luis asked a guy on the porch, like, "Hi, do you know, is there a fountain?" We knew where the fountain was. We had just walked by it, but we wanted to see, like, we wanted to start testing who offers something. Like,
Yeah.
do you ask and would they help you? Like,
Right.
we were
Right.
experimenting with some of this in some places. So Luis asked in Catalan, in their common language, Do you know where the fountain is? Because we need to refill our bottles. And the guy, like in other places, they would have taken our water bottles and filled it up themselves and then brought it back outside.
Right.
Or invited us in to fill in whatever we want and like use the bathroom, right? This guy said, yeah, if you go down this little hill, you'll get to the city hall building and there's a fountain right next to the city hall building. And I could feel like that an arrow had just sliced through Luis's heart because these
Oh,
were his own people
yeah. And he's speaking
being
their
super
language.
protective, right? Like they're being super protective. But
Oh,
he's like, but I said, but you asked them for a fountain. You didn't ask him to fill up the water bottle, right?
right.
So
Right.
they helped because you asked for a specific thing. But if
Mm.
you would have just said, hey, can I fill up my water bottle?
You might have said
We
yes.
don't know if they would have sent us to the fountain or not, right? So that we kind of like didn't end up, we didn't do much after that, but it was sort of that like, you've got your thing going on over there, I got my thing over here. There is a little bit of a, as you move closer, as you move more into modern Europe, you kind of get walled off,
Absolutely. I
which
could
was fascinating to know. Like,
interesting, right? Like you wouldn't have observed that otherwise if you had not had that other experience, I
that's
guess,
right.
earlier and seen that cultures are so different, right? And how they approach people and strangers and are they welcoming or not welcoming or
And
it's
it's
just
it's about their history too, right?
of course, yeah.
It is that sort of like there are cultures that are taught hospitality as sort of the rule. Like it's not just about karma or sometimes you think like, oh, they're just making merit, like they're
Yeah.
just,
It's
you know,
genuine. It feels genuine what
but
was
it feels
offered.
genuine. Like they're like they feel that it's their responsibility to make sure that you have a safe journey. Like
Oh,
this is
I love
particularly true in the Central Asian cultures, like
that.
because long ago you it was far away to the next place. Like
Mhm.
there was a long distance to go. So there is something quite fascinating about that. And then, in Europe, it's the we were always the leaders of this part of the world
A
and
lot of warfare, I think,
a warfare,
conquest and
invaders, conquesting. Yeah.
background and history, right? And what I found so interesting was you finally finished your walk. And I mean, I know it had changed in some ways, Luis, because you said even
Yeah.
he felt like he wanted more silence. Like it
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
there are changes,
Yeah.
I think, that happen when you journey like this. And sometimes they're unexpected, but you guys ended up kind of pursuing his dream and now you're in a different part of Spain, right? Where are you guys living?
We are about an hour outside of Barcelona in a small town called Villafranca. And yeah, we are renovating his great grandfather's house. Like it is a completely different. We decided not to come back into Barcelona. Like we really wanted a quieter existence. Barcelona's a noisy, like all cities, a noisy city,
Right.
and people are right on top of each other.
Yeah.
So we're in a town now of like 40,000 people, and this house has its own huge story. It was built in the earliest record we have is like 1840, early 1840s. It was bought and sold and bought and sold, and eventually his great grandfather bought it. And during the Spanish Civil War, it was taken away from them. They had to flee, go across
How
the
did they
border
get
to
it back after
France.
that? I mean, how did
Yeah, they had to. His great grandfather had to do a lot of work to get it back when they came back. They had to flee during the war cross the border. They were part of a big migration of people fleeing as Franco moved in and invaded all the parts of Spain. And he got it back. And then Luis has always carried with him that he really wanted to do something with that house. Like he's always kind of had it not always talked about, but kind of the house was always just very special to him. So yeah, and then we came back. We finished in 2019, and then the pandemic. Like we started to come here and make that possible. Of like, okay, we're gonna just begin again over here. And then as we started the renovation, we got slammed by our first confinement. And to go from this like being outside every day, being out in the world, to
all
like
day,
to
locked,
settling,
like locked in. Must have
to
been
be
really,
locked in. Yeah, like,
isn't it
well,
hard
for
on your,
everybody,
is
right?
it
Like
hard
for
on your
everybody.
psyche though to have to adjust so quickly to that? Because your spirit kind of gets used to being out in outside and moving and in nature, and then to be, that must have felt very confining for you.
It 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 did feel really confining. Like we did feel trapped, but in the like everybody, right? Because it was so kind of like
Uncertain.
uncertain of what that all meant, right? And how we were going to get through it. But we began on the really rough days when it was really really hot or just the weather like was really we kind of had this word of just go into your turtle shell, like pull your backpack up just a little bit more,
Mhm.
tuck in, and just keep going, right? Like to do the best you can, just head down and keep going. And we both, um, I've done several marathons. He's done one marathon. Like we do have an endurance quality to
I was
us,
gonna
and
say you
that's why the
definitely,
walk,
yeah, to be able to do that, you're going to have that kind of endurance, and also almost like this grit about you, like you know how to
yeah,
just dig in and do it,
and
you
just
know.
do it. And that's what happened during the confinement. Like we kind of just dug in, and we also came with a really deep appreciation though, right? Like we were able to do all of our walk and go from start to finish without a confinement period. Like
Amazing.
we were able to accomplish this thing like because if we had started when Louis thought we were going to start, we would have we would have been caught in the first 6 months like of that confinement. But the whole plan rearranged, and we ended up doing it about 2.5 years after the idea initially started. I thought we were going to do it in 6 months. Like, okay, the idea's here. We'll go in
Excitement,
6 months.
right?
And he's
Yeah.
like, no, we got to wait like 5 years. We got to save money and do all this stuff. So we
Yeah.
did it in 2.5 years. It was 2.5 years from when the idea was raised to our start date, which I started on my 44th birthday, by the way. Like, I'm not a young spring chicken walking out there.
44 is a magical year, though. 44 is a really special year. I mean, it's a really
Yeah.
pivotal year of transformation. People
Yeah.
who follow numerology, or, that 4-4 is very meaningful. And
Yeah,
that,
and I chose like we were like, okay, if we're gonna start in January, we might as well start on my birthday,
yeah. Oh my
And
God.
it was like walking out of Bangkok, very hot weather in January because it was like right before it's not really rainy season yet, and it's getting hotter and hotter every day, and
The humidity,
oh
I
my God, we were
imagine.
still in Bangkok, like hours late, like if we were walking in construction zones of
Oh my,
new roads, and
oh my
we
gosh.
were like, oh, okay, let's just get to the next telephone pole. Let's just get to the next
Oh
pole.
my gosh. That's
It
a
was
really rough
so like, oh my God, this is how I'm celebrating my 44th birthday.
You're like, I chose this? What?
Oh my God, what the heck is going on? Right? Like it started in hour one. Like, what are we doing here? But you still have the illusion, right? You still
What
have
did
the
it feel like to cross the finish line when you finished your journey?
it was
Like
really
you were like
nice.
home. What
It was
was that
really
feeling?
nice. It was really nice. We had some people meet us along the way, and
Walk you in?
yeah, we had a couple people walk us in. We
Yes.
actually had, by that point, one of our friends had read one of our emails or Luis's emails or like one of our posts or something. And he wanted to do a documentary about us. So he ended up, like, we had started doing a documentary, he had met us a few weeks earlier. Like, we had started to
Oh,
do
I
this.
love it.
So he was following us around with the camera and like, okay, guys, walk back here again. And we're like, okay, we're gonna walk. Like,
You're like,
so
I
we had to
really
go
want to get
backwards a
home.
little bit and like walk. And then we chose to have a party in this place. There's a Catalan tradition of giants, and they make these big kind of structures, and then people carry them and they dance with them. And it was a neighborhood festival. Like it was a neighborhood festival going on and the center that we chose to have our little party and welcome party, we had like I don't know, we had a couple dozen people show up and welcome us there. But the giants were walking in and out also. Like
Are
when
you
we
serious?
arrived, and there were like these
Are you
big
serious?
giant dancing
Oh
figures
my
kind
gosh.
of celebrating with us. And I
Wow.
didn't know what time that would happen. Like we didn't know
Right.
which day we were coming.
Right.
But it was nice. Like you got the guys playing the drums and the music, and you got the
Oh
people
my
dancing with their
gosh.
statues,
That
and
is
like
so
we're just
beautiful.
kind of walking
I
into the
love
center.
it. I
And a
love
lot of people who came didn't know about this place, so it was nice because they got to see like some of the festival in the neighborhood
Yeah.
and be with us and welcome us, and like
I
it was
love it. Oh
really,
my God.
really like
So special.
fulfilling. It was
That's
really fulfilling to like, and then we had the little party, and like Luis's parents went home by train or taxi. It, like we kind of picked up some of the things that we had a couple photos made of us, so we just packed that up and like we walked the last 2 or 3 kilometers back to Luis's parents' house because our apartment was rented. So
oh
it was
my
kind of funny. We had this big party, and we're like, okay, well, how are we going to get home? And we're like, okay, I guess we're going to walk. So we had like these 2 moments of like,
God.
okay,
Oh
three
wow.
moments. Like here we are in Barcelona. Look, like we're walking our beach again. Like we're walking. Wow,
I
look at all this. And then we had this party. And then in the end, it was the two of us just walking the last
I mean,
stretch
this is
together.
so perfect. This is like
Quiet, like
perfect like
quietness.
movie. This is like a movie, like for real. I want to come to the premiere of this movie. I
Well, we just got word this week that the documentary is going to be shown in Cardiff and then in a travel festival down not far from Alicante in Spain. Like that's
really
yeah, so the end of October and the beginning of November.
this
So
October?
this October, yeah, October
Oh my God.
2022, and then yeah, and then in November. And I'm
That's
going to be at that one. Like I'm going to be at the one in November, but
the end of November or the beginning?
middle of
Oh,
November.
the middle of November.
But
Wow.
don't worry, Wendy, because as soon as we get it out of the film festival circuit, we're gonna have a lot of virtual showings about it. We're gonna
Wow.
yeah
I want
we hope it gets into like distributed in different ways.
absolutely. Absolutely. That would be so
Yeah,
exciting.
it's a
I'm
short one. It's only like 27 minutes, but it
I'm
really
determined to meet you in person.
I know. When are we gonna do that, Wendy?
It's going to happen. We've
I
already
know.
manifested
I
it. So it's going
know.
to be sweet when we actually do it because
I
it will
know. Can you
happen.
imagine?
I can't, but I'm excited about it.
I know.
So
How are we gonna make it?
let's talk a little bit in the few minutes we have
Oh,
left.
I know.
What are
God,
you
see,
doing now? Like,
we're gonna need 8 hours.
I mean, we could talk forever, really, which is what's exciting. And I am going to have you back on. But tell me,
Thank
as the pandemic hit, I know you reinvented your
I
whole
did.
business. It's like
I did.
all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to do this quote
Yeah.
unquote journalism anymore, this kind of structured writing. And right during the pandemic, you start a new business, which is so
It,
incredible.
it's that invitation again, right? There was a moment I came back. I knew for years, even before the walk, that I was probably leaving journalism. I had done it since I graduated university, and like before that, I started as an intern at a daily newspaper writing obituaries, right? Like I had already done my time. Like I had already
Yeah.
done my career. So
Yeah.
coming back and like sitting down and writing business stories, I somehow developed an expertise as a supply chain management and procurement and logistics person. So I knew all this stuff. I had written about the tech industry. And then I just sat down. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. It's not there.
Feels a
So
little
I
soul
said,
crushing.
I'm done. I'm going to start this whole new business. I'm going to give myself like a year or two, like 2 years, I thought. I'm like, just going to give it 2 years and like phase this all out. And then the pandemic, like I literally said those words out loud, and then we were literally like in confinement, and I had like one of my contracts, everybody kind of shut down, right, and pulled all their money in. So I
Right.
lost like 2 or 3 clients right away. Um, I was running into a problem with another one, like, and he had gotten COVID, his wife, like, there was no continuity in this moment, and I'm like, okay, well, what else do I want to do? So then I really sat with it. I sat in a meditation, like I started to like well, what's next for me? Because it's gonna happen before 2 years. Like,
Right.
here I am in the thick of it. And
Right.
I really just said, like I'm approaching. By then I was 2020. I was in 48. I was 48 years old. It was at the end, like going into my 49th year. And I thought, yeah, I want to be on a 30-year joy journey. I don't know how many years I have left, but I want my path to be about joy.
Me
And
too.
then like, yeah, like I just, right, like I want all my paths to lead into the center of my joy, and from my center of joy lead out.
Exactly. I want my life to be an expression of the purest version of me, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
full expression of me. You know, if that makes sense? Like, I want to share with the world my true essence and then also receive the reflection back.
that right,
You know, does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah, because I'm exactly in that path, right? So
Yeah.
I shifted the journalism. I said, well, let me keep the journal, let me keep the expertise there. And let me begin to remember why I got into journalism. And it was to help be a voice, right? And to help others have a voice.
Mhm.
So I just turned that into, let me hold the space for others who want to start writing their books, their stories, their memoirs, while I kind of figure out what story needs to come out of me
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
Like help guide others through that, ultimately to guide myself through it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
don't
love
we
it.
do this all the time? Like, we
And I
always
feel
are.
like it's a perfect time because I think there was a lot of inner reflection during that pandemic.
Yeah,
And a lot of
yeah,
ideas were birthed, and a lot of
for
people were
all of
kind of
us.
reborn through that
Yeah.
experience of reconnection with self and the silence and the confinement. And it was rough for a lot of people because things were kind of shattering and breaking away that weren't aligned anymore. And you're facing it. You were facing it
Right, like that.
right in your face, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that your timing was actually perfect.
It's always perfect. Like the
Right?
timing on these things always happens when you're ready for it. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been a journey too, right? Like here I am stepping in like, okay, I don't know, like do I gotta make a YouTube video? I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do that. Right? Like,
I find that I just kind of follow my compass every day. I don't really go
yeah,
too
I love that.
far beyond the now. So I'm just always kind of in the now. What am I being guided to right now? And it allows me to really stay aligned in where I'm putting my energy and not get too caught up in how is this going to look or how is this going to happen or how is this going to unfold, because I know what's coming to me is coming to me, you know?
Yeah.
I don't really sweat it too much. It's like it's already
Oh,
there. So I'm
it's so
just
nice that you know that too. Like I like having like a 21-month plan. Like, and
things
it doesn't mean that
take
it's all happening that way. It just means like I kind of need to have a little bit of like, okay, I'd like to go
like
this
an
way.
outline kind of.
Yeah, like I kind of need to know a little bit. I don't need to know the destination. I just need to know like, okay, I'm kind of working towards this. And
Yeah.
then if I go this way, it's okay. If I go this way, it's
Yeah.
okay.
I
Like it
think
doesn't
being
matter
willing
which
to
way I
pivot. I
go.
think being willing to shift, because I think
Yeah,
really
that
we
too.
are going, we're in such a pivotal time of transition, really, for the planet,
Yeah,
energetically, for humanity, all of it, and
absolutely.
also reflected within our inner being, right? And so I think it's, as long as we're willing to shift and pivot as needed, that's great. You can have that kind of outline if you're willing, because if you're really rigid and holding
Yeah,
so tightly to it, it's not really going to work out.
right. It's
You
that's
know,
exactly right.
honestly.
Yeah,
Honestly.
and it is the willingness, right? It's always like for me, it's always the willingness. Like, yeah, I'm willing to try. Like, I'm
Yeah.
willing to do it. I'm willing to like, okay, if I fail, like fail what? Like fail at
I
being
don't
me?
believe in
I don't
failure.
know.
I don't really believe
Like,
in failure. I
but
just think we're always learning.
right,
And so you don't fail in learning. You're just always learning. This is
you're
an
just always
experience
learning.
of growth, and you don't have all the answers. That's why we're on this journey, is to
Right.
learn and evolve and shift and grow. So I really don't buy into that whole success failure paradigm. I just think it's a disservice to ourselves to place that measuring stick on ourselves or others, you know, honestly. But I really want to encourage you to invite people to work with you. So what's the best way for people to
Right.
contact you, reach
Uh,
you?
Thank you, Wendy. That's like right now the best way to find me is at alwaysonmyway.com. I'm constantly like adding new workshops and different things that are going on there. That's being refreshed almost every month. So there's always something like that I'm kind of throwing
So
myself
creative. I feel
into.
those creativity juices flowing all the time.
Yeah, there's like movement classes and there's crafting sessions. And then there's just like a combination of what I'm liking to do a lot lately is like creativity intervals. So you do a little bit of movement and do a little bit of meditation, and then you get your hands in there and
I
do
love
something.
it.
And then
I
you get back up and you move a little and you meditate a little and you create a
That's
little
so
bit more.
great. I love that you're
So
creating this new template because I feel like we're all creating these new consciousness grids and templates within ourselves and doing things differently. So not there's no
I
template,
hope
right?
so.
You
Yeah,
are the
there's
template
not.
and that you get to create it and then you kind of send that out into the collective consciousness and people can kind of download that or access that in some way and spark their own creativity, you know? And
That's
so
that's what
I
it
think
is.
I think it's
Yeah,
cool that you're able to do that. So people can find that on alwaysonmyway.com.
that's right.
And if
Oh,
they want to
there's the
write
best
with
place.
you or use you as a
Then, yeah, that is jenniferbalco.com, and it's Jennifer with two N's, and then BALJKO.com.
awesome.
And I run 3 mentoring programs a year from October to December, and then from February to April. And well, and then the May June is sort of becoming a little bit more of a sprint, like just kind of like what can you accomplish before summer? Like for me, summer is the time I kind of pull in and
Yeah.
like get. I find myself exhausted in the
What
summer.
does the
So
mentoring look like? Like, what does that look like? If people want to
so
become
with the
mentor.
mindful writing stuff, it we have 2 calls a month, and then my mentees submit a 3,000 word essay that I read very carefully and provide a lot of high level,
Wow.
big vision calls with. They get tips and meditation for that. And this is being mirrored this year, and it's starting to come also into the always on my way of like, what do you want your joy journey to look like? All right, let's get on a call.
I love
Let's
it.
start like figuring that out. I'm launching very soon. It should have been up in October. It will be up in November. But like Voxer training days, like wrench my brain for a day and let's like, I don't
Wow.
know, let's just spark, inspiration somehow for you. That's
That's
that's coming.
exciting.
Yeah, I like it. I've been doing some of the Voxer days with some of my mentors, and I really love it. It's just like this free flow creativity thing of like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? What do you think about this? And I'm finding it so enriching that I've started to build that out for me
That
too.
is so
So,
cool. I'm really excited for you.
yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you
It's
so
fun.
much for joining me. This has been so, so fun to share your journey and share your spirit and just everything that you're opening up and creating now as from that springboard of experience. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just so honored that you said yes. And
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for the
of
invitation.
of course, do you have any like words of wisdom for people who are in those moments where they want to give up or they just feel so
I
defeated?
do. I do. And I actually said these words this morning for something that I'm launching this week. But my deeper vision in this is that I had, when I started this pivot in my own life with Always on My Way, and I started to create the Fierce Awakened Woman conference, I had a visualization with Artemis and Lilith, these 2 really powerful goddesses, leading us through a forest. And I was running with them, right behind them. And as I was looking over, there were hundreds and thousands of women running with us. And we were all laughing, and we were all like just running wild and free through the forest. When we arrived at this village, we were greeted by the villagers. Artemis and Lilith started to hand each of us a gift. And I witnessed it. I witnessed all of us receiving this unique gift that was ours to bring out into the world. And it's really from this visualization that I show up every day, right? Because I am in the space right now that I believe all of us are discovering these new gifts,
Mhm.
and we have to open ourselves to receiving them. And sometimes you just got to run through the forest and find them. You know, like sometimes you just got to get out there and do it. So for those are my words, is that have you found your unique gifts that you're going to share with the world yet? And if you haven't, keep showing up for yourself. Keep making your life a joy journey. Make it a labyrinth so that everything you do is coming back to this center of joy and then coming back out. And then that's the gift that you're going to receive and give. And every time I think of that visualization, I just feel like, you know, may you never know how far your ripple goes. You know, may you never know. It's a wish I've heard said by many other people, and I say it to many other people, and yeah, just make it a joy journey.
That was beautiful. I almost started crying when you said that.
Thank you. So do I. I almost cry every single time
Cry
I.
now.
Yeah.
I'll cry.
No,
But
every time I remember that,
I
like,
could feel the energy of it,
feeling.
I think, and it was so magical and so powerful and so true. Like that is what this work is about. It's about us finding that divine spark, that gift, that
The path of me.
the path, right? The path of me, and following it back to yourself. And then nurturing it and feeding it and expanding it so you can share that out. So, to everyone who's listening, may you find that. May you find that beautiful gift within inside of you, because it's there just waiting to be discovered, right?
Right. Wendy,
So,
you are a gift. Thank you so
oh,
much.
thank you. And to all my listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this incredible conversation. Subscribe, like, and share. We love you. Thank you for being here. Be kind to yourselves and have a beautiful day. Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.